Hi, everyone. Welcome to Shuttered Flow. Today, our guest is Matt Sloane. He is the co founder and chief strategy officer at Skyfire AI and is a expert, or we're going to call him an expert, on all things drone. So, we're going to dig a little bit deeper today in drone regulations, especially since there's a lot of things changing this year. And so, Jeremy, being somebody who uses drones quite a bit, has a ton of questions for Matt.
Yeah,
Fire
bring
away.
them on.
Thanks for coming in, Matt.
No, thanks for having me.
Matt and I worked together back in the day at CNN. You were there for a while. By the way, some of our old people are still there. I saw them recently. Sanjay says hi.
Yes. He
But
bought a drone from me.
oh, did he? Of course he did.
Yeah.
So you left CNN and you started a company, Skyfire AI. And I want you to tell, what was your idea? It's mostly what you do, what the company does, and I don't want to step on toes, is a lot of first responder, automation, things that can be used for more industrial purposes, less video, photo specific, but go ahead. Tell us a brief recap.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, so I left CNN in 2014, and I was still freelancing. And I was able to, kind of keep the Fit Nation project that you worked with us closely on for many years. But what the Fit Nation project basically was is we were helping people change their life and get in shape and quit smoking and all that good stuff. But we were doing that by training them for triathlons. And so, we took people all over the world and they trained for triathlons and made all these transformations. But one of the things that was really tricky from a production standpoint was getting video of them swimming in the ocean. And so I bought a drone, much to CNN's dismay. They didn't know about it, and apparently that was frowned upon at the time. But we got some cool drone shots of these guys swimming. And I just started to get into drones a little bit. And I was asked by our old friend Dave Rust, who you know well, and Vito Maggiello, who another CNN alum. They were asked to give a talk at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center about how the media covered major news stories. It was a public information officer trainee class, and so Dave was traveling somewhere in the world and said, "Hey, Matt knows something about first responder stuff because I used to be an EMT." And he's like, "Hey, you want to go do this talk for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I had just gotten the drone the day before that. I went down to the Public Safety Training Center and I said, I told them all about satellite trucks and, reporters showing up and all that. But I said, but now we have these flying cameras and, we can annoy you in different ways. And 4 fire chiefs came up to me after that and they said, "Hey, how do I get that for my department? I would love to use something like that." And I said, "I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out." And that's the day that we started Skyfire. So that was in, I think it was May 2014. And myself and a couple of college roommate friends of mine, one of whom was an attorney. So he helped me figure out all the regulatory stuff. And then another one had started a couple of small companies. And, the three of us just kind of got started trying to figure this out. And so, within a few months, we were on the show floor at the National Fire Chiefs Conference and acting like we knew everything about drones and how to incorporate them. And, we were definitely faking it till we made it. And, that was now 12 and a half years ago. So I, at some point we were, we were always the experts because nobody else was an expert. So we were as much an expert as the next guy. Pardon me. And, over that period of time, we have evolved into a really exciting company that does a lot of stuff for first responders and critical infrastructure customers. So we worked with, everything from a 6-person police department in Idaho all the way up to, FBI, Secret Service, Customs and Border Patrol, all of the military branches we've done training for. We had people in Ukraine training, military operators on aircraft. So, we've kind of been through the evolution of the drone industry has happened, before my eyes over the last 12 years. And so it's an exciting time to be part of it. It's a terrifying time to be part of it. There's a whole lot of change that it really is we're all just still trying to figure out what it all means. I mean, it's been a wild roller coaster to say the least.
So when you started, was there even a Part 107 at that point? I don't think there wasn't.
No, there wasn't. And not only there wasn't even 333 exemptions, which is the predecessor of that. So we were, basically the way the FAA sort of responded to drones There was always model aircraft, and so, but there was like 12 people in the country that did that. And so then all of a sudden we all started buying these drones, and the FAA is like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So what all they could do at the time was kind of shoehorn it into manned aircraft regulations, which don't make a whole lot of sense for drones. And so it was a weird evolution over a couple of cycles of regulation. So, I went and got my pilot's license because at the time you had to have a pilot's license to operate a drone, which is insane. But I did it, and so we had a 333 exemption at the time, and then Part 107 came out, and that changed everything. Now, the Part 108 rulemaking came out last year, and that's going to change everything. So, it's every time it gets better. I think overall, and I know we're going to get into this, but overall, I think Part 108 is a massive step forward for the industry. It's going to be challenging in some ways, and I'm happy to talk about all that stuff too. But, we really are. I'm not kidding. We were duct taping GoPros to drones back in 2014 because the cameras on the ones that we bought were so bad that like you couldn't use them. You
Yeah,
couldn't use
that
the
was the way to
footage.
go.
Certainly not for CNN.
Yeah.
And now we're at a place now where obviously we've got all kinds of crazy and amazing equipment, some of which you now won't be able to use. So anyway, more
You can
more
use
on
it.
that
You just
topic.
can't bring it into the
Can't buy
country.
it.
It just can't get into the country.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So now, there's going to be black market smuggling operations. Instead of bringing drugs across the border, we'll be bringing drones across the border.
People traveling just to go buy a drone. So
Why do you think I went to New
a-
Zealand? I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. So taking a step back a little bit. So pre the Part 107 license, you had to actually be licensed as a pilot. So you had to actually do flight training and
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
wow,
So you
that's
had
crazy.
to, the move back then was the easiest quote unquote pilot's license to get was a hot air balloon license. And so a lot of
Amazing.
people, and it was about $5,000, I think, you could go get your hot air balloon license. That's totally, unusable for anything else. And so I just said, the hell with it. I'm going to get a regular pilot's license. So actually what I did, not even quite there, but I got a sport pilot's license, which allowed me to fly two-seaters during the day, under 1,320 pounds gross takeoff weight, airplane, people, and gas included. So
That's
tiny little
ultralight.
airplanes, not quite, a little bit heavier than ultralight, but not full pilot's license. So I went down to Orlando and I did a 12-day accelerated program, and got my pilot's license. I'd never flown an airplane, and then 12 days later I was a pilot. So
Pretty cool. Do you
that's what I did.
do you still fly airplanes at all, or were you like,
I
nope, that's done, or are you still
No,
doing
I
it?
love it. And honestly, it was a great way to write off something that I had been wanting to do for, since I was a kid. So no, still fly. I don't get to do it nearly enough because it's not an inexpensive or untime consuming hobby, but I do love it. It's definitely my happy place. So now it's just for fun though.
That's fun. All right. So, what is your main focus? What do you look most forward to? We'll get into the regulations and stuff right now, but just a little bit about Skyfire. When you go out there and you have this great training facility over in Alabama, which looks incredible, where you can have all these different options of surveys and firefighters or police, what is it that you're like most excited about going forward of the uses?
Yeah. So my passion, the thing that keeps me going day to day is helping first responders do their jobs more effectively. So like my whole thing is basically like, as a firefighter or police officer, you get paid terribly. You put your life in harm's way you put your life in danger every single day. And then at the end of the day, you go home and all you get is, threats and violence, not from your family, obviously, but like it's a job that nobody wants to do anymore because, it's a thankless job. People do it for the love of the game, particularly have a soft spot for firefighters because, they have like their cancer rates are through the roof because they're going into these burning buildings and stuff like that. And so, my whole sort of passion in all this is I want to help first responders do their jobs more effectively. And so if you can send a, $500 piece of plastic into a burning building instead of a firefighter, or you can send that into a barricaded suspect and, the drone gets shot instead of a guy or a gal, doing on a SWAT team. It's safer for the officers. It's safer even for the suspects because, the SWAT team's not in there, so they're not going to get shot either. That's, I think, what is at the core of it for me. I did EMS in college. And so, I'm really excited about putting defibrillators on drones and EpiPens and Narcan and trauma kits and all that kind of stuff too. And so, if we can, it's something like if you have a cardiac arrest and you stop breathing, after 5 minutes, your chances of survival go down to like 10%. If you know, and the average EMS response time is 5 to 7 minutes. So that's why we put defibrillators in all these buildings and everything. But no, you know, what if you're out on a golf course, or what if you're out walking, or what if you on, you know, there's a building right there, but you don't know where the defibrillator is. And so if I can get an AED there in 2 or 3 minutes, you know, you could actually increase those chances of survival significantly. So that's what drives everything from my perspective. You know, we are on the cutting edge right now of some really, really cool times in AI. And we can do some really cool, you know, we're working on some software. We were actually acquired by an AI software company about a year and a half ago. And these guys are, you know, former DARPA, you know, super, super smart guys who I feel like a moron when I'm talking to them. But combining what they do with what we do, it's incredible what's coming. So.
Well, and I see companies like, I'm sure you've seen Zipline that does the delivery drones over in Africa, and they're doing they're going to try to do it locally here, but it's like things like that. Thanks to my child, you have a child around the same age, watching Mark Roper on YouTube, I got to see that, and it's like fascinating to deliver blood to hospitals and places that it couldn't get as easy. Similar idea with less regulation over there, of course, to make it easier to do. So going into regulation, let's just start with Part 108. For everyone that doesn't know, if you're flying a drone and you're using it for any reason, you should at least have your Part 107, because otherwise you're breaking the law. And do the training, do the classes. The plan is for Part 108. You think it'll probably come this year?
Yeah. So kind of where we're at with it is, you know, we've been the beyond visual line of sight. So, all right, let me back up even further. You have to operate a drone within line of sight. That's what the rule says. So I have to be able to see the drone physically. That's very challenging if you're Amazon and you're trying to deliver packages and you can only go as far as you can see the drone. It sort of limits your business model, right? So the holy grail has been beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS is what we call it for short. And so we've been working towards BVLOS for many years. We do this already with first responders. So we run the sort of the big thing in public safety right now is DFR, or drone as a first responder. So I fly the drone from a rooftop, go directly to a 911 call, don't have to drive it there first, and we're getting there in 2.5 minutes. And we can, you know, see things that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. We can follow suspects that go running off into the woods. And there's some really interesting stories there. So we can talk about that. But to do any of that, you have to go beyond visual line of sight. And so you weren't allowed to do that under Part 107. So they put a waiver process in place, and it's cumbersome and it's complicated.
It's always
the whole
changing.
goal, and it's always changing. The goal of Part 108 basically was to codify that. And so it's like, you know, people like Amazon, Walmart, Zipline, you know, can't really plan for like scaling up operations until there's regulations that make sense. And so you'll see Walmart delivering stuff in Bentonville and in Dallas, and, you know, they're using Zipline for a lot of those. You know,
we
Amazon's
just got it
delivering
here in Atlanta with Wings is doing
perfect Wing. Yeah. Google's
Wing,
delivery. Yeah. So, it's pretty cool, but they're only doing it in 1 or 2 cities because the amount of infrastructure they need to make it happen is overwhelming. And so there was a McKinsey report that came out a couple of years ago that basically said the cheapest you could possibly deliver a package by drone is like $17 a delivery. So if you're delivering like a Chick-fil-A sandwich that costs $10 and it costs you $17 to deliver it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, you know, there's definitely work to be done there. All of these companies that are doing it, every one of them is taking a loss on every delivery that they're making. Like, there just is no way around it. But people like Walmart and Amazon can absorb those costs and get people excited about it. Interestingly, by the way, and this is the total aside here, but do you know what the 2 most common ordered items are on Walmart's drone delivery?
It's got to be toilet paper.
Okay, toilet paper. Edward, what do you think?
No idea. I mean, they're not going to deliver alcohol, so it's got to be something. Diapers?
Both good guesses, both wrong. 5-pound bags of lemons.
Amazing.
And eggs. And the reason is because people want to see if the eggs will break when they get dropped, and they want to see if they can put enough lemons on the drone to make it crash. So this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, people want to break everything.
Yeah. So you know, it's an interesting study in humanity. But that aside, for them to really scale this kind of stuff up, they needed better regulations that account for that. And so that's what Part 108 is. So Part 108 is the beyond line of sight rulemaking. It started like 4 years ago with a rulemaking committee that came up with some recommendations, and then they finally got, they finally published a report, and then it was another 2 years that went by before the notice of proposed rulemaking came out. That came out beginning of this year. There was like a 60-day public comment period. They got like 3,000 comments on it. Now they're just writing the final rule. That'll get issued, and then there'll be an implementation period. So yes, I think the final rule will come out this year. I don't think it'll go into full implementation till next year or the year after that. But at least we know we have a target now. We know where we're heading. So
yeah, and it's going to change everything as far as drone. I mean, I've read through some of the notes from it, like the weight, the amount, the size of things you can do. It's like it scares me a little bit that something 1,300 pounds can be that, like that's the high end.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that it's, puts it on a company as opposed to an individual person, all of those little things. So for a person who wants to use this for photography, video, CNN was a great example. I remember when you talked about it, I remember early on, they're like, oh, the legal team was like, you can fly one up, but it has to be tethered in case something goes wrong. There was like all these issues that a whole team of people had to get involved to do. How does this affect that world where it's video, photo, live news? Like, does it really?
Nothing at all. Nothing's going to change. So Part 107 is going to stay where it is. That's still the framework that everybody's going to use for that type of stuff. The one thing that is going to change is if you want to go beyond line of sight. And so if you're going to do, like, basically right now, all BB loss happens under Part 107 with a waiver. All of that's going to shift over to Part 108. If you're flying within line of sight, you're CNN, you're Jeremy Freeman, you're, doing surveying and you're standing there watching the drone, you're good. That's not going to change. Now, what will be interesting too, though, is you have to keep in mind that, like, right now, the only two classes, well, there's like three, but the only three classes of things that are in the airspace are Jeremy Freeman's drone, commercial airliners, and helicopters. Once we start getting into Part 108 world, there's going to be a lot more drones. So there's going to be package delivery drones. There's going to be air taxis. There's going to be, all of these different types of and classes of aircraft. And so we got to find a way to deconflict all that stuff. And that's a big part of what's in Part 108. So, without boring you to death with all the details, there's this provision in there for creating Part 146, which is an automated data service provider. And that's a whole new class of company that will basically be able to deconflict, like, who's where and who's doing what, so they don't smash into each other.
It's air traffic control for drones, basically.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And so that'll make your life a little bit more complicated as Jeremy Freeman trying to fly a drone to get a pretty picture. But it's a necessary evil. It's, why we all have to register our drones. It's why we all have to have remote ID on them now. All of that is in service of eventually getting to this place where they can all, operate, coexist peacefully.
So with Part 108, if you are, and I think this is obviously less important for still photography, but more important for video, if you do want to shoot video out of line of sight, which will be something that obviously with video you would want if you could do, is that something that Part 108, if you get a Part 108 license, that you would be able to do then?
Yeah, so that remains to be seen a little bit. And I let me qualify that a little bit. So first of all, you won't be getting a Part 108 license. Part 107, you get your own license. Part 108 is really focused on companies that do long-term operations.
All commercial.
And so they will get the certification, and then the operators will be qualified under their certification. And so what happens to the individual person who wants to do line of sight is still kind of a gray area. We don't know exactly where that's going to go. We're concerned about it. One of the things that I'm concerned about with Part 108, and overall I really liked it, but one of the things I'm concerned about is what happens to public safety agencies, because we're doing BB loss operations every day. Like, we run drone first responder programs where, like, it's Skyfire people that are operating drones in these cities. And in some cases we're not in the same place, right? So we don't have an observer standing there watching it. So we are doing BB loss. And so what happens to that? Yeah, no, it absolutely. And, we're doing flights up to 2 miles right now without being able to see the aircraft. We have to be able to see the airspace with either a person or a radar or some kind of optical detection system. But there's a kind of a question mark about where that all lands. Now, for public safety, there's a third avenue of regulations called Part 91, which we don't have to talk about much other than to say that it exists. And so public safety is really primarily operating in Part 91. So they'll still be able to do it, but what happens to video, what happens to, you're not actually a public agency, but you're doing public safety. Like volunteer fire departments are actually typically like nonprofit organizations, search and rescue groups and stuff like that. So there's still some big question marks there that we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
there seems to be a ton of gray area, right? There seems to be a lot of gray area. If there's
And that's inevitable.
yeah,
and I
it
feel like it's
please
been that
everybody.
way from the beginning too. It's
Yeah.
like the moment you could go buy a drone and take it up in the air, trust me, there's things that happen that I see people do all the time that I'm like, you should not be doing that. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's very regular. The amount of times I see them, like I see them regularly over 75 in the connector downtown, where it's just
Yeah.
like somebody
it's
from Georgia
terrifying.
Tech flying it up over the thing and getting a thing. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
there's
you
ways
think about
to do
like
it, but still.
we thought about that. Like we were doing something down by Atlanta airport, and we were like, God, any one of these neighborhoods, like somebody could have a drone. They could just pop it up in the air and be like, oh, look, I just got this drone for Christmas. Let me go see what, and they're like half a mile from the airport, the busiest airport in the world, no less. And you're like, oh my God, like what is happening here? But if you really think about it, it's like if somebody gave you a remote control car for Christmas and you went and took it out on 285, like that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're taking a remote control airplane and you're putting it up with the big boys. And, it's not usually a problem because, if an airliner is at 500 feet above the ground, like the airliner's the problem, not the drone. But that changes when you get close to an airport because by definition, they have to land there. So they're coming down out of altitude. So, and we see it all the time with helicopters, and the helicopters freak me out because it's medical helicopters, it's Army helicopters. Not to be doom and gloom about it, but I mean, that's part of what happened in the DC airplane crashes. There was an Army helicopter who didn't have their transponder on, and that's the problem. So, we're going to have to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've done shoots recently for Piedmont Hospital and the shots of the exterior, the one in Augusta and somewhere else. And it's like, no, I am overly making sure that the security knows that I'm there, putting my flight plan out, letting them know that the time I'm going to be there because I'm in contact with the person who knows the helicopter would be coming in. Because yes, I'm going around the helipad to get my shot, and I need to be out of there immediately.
Yeah. We do that all the time here in Huntsville, at Huntsville Hospital, at Emory, and Atlanta. Yeah, it's a little scary. So
yeah, it should be regulated a little bit more. I mean, I should not be allowed to just fly wherever I want to. Listen,
yeah,
my brother's a pilot, so
I agree that you should not be allowed to fly.
Hey, I did Spaghetti Junction recently, and I had to get permission for that one because you're right by PDK.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. When we did a the Nissan dealership right there, right by Spaghetti Junction. So we did a shoot up there early days, and we actually had to rent a helicopter and shoot out the side of the helicopter because we couldn't get a waiver to fly a drone there because it was too close to PDK. So
yeah, you can get them a lot easier now, which I didn't go that close to it, but it's still so much easier now. They've almost made that too easy with all the different apps that you can go on and just do everything. Okay, now let's talk about the current ban that we have going on.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, and it's so the FCC regulates all these things, every piece of mechanical, all the stuff they regulate it. And they decided to make it all foreign made drones.
Yeah. And parts,
which is important because if you have one that works now, if you have your drone now, it's going to fly, it's going to be fine. If it breaks, you might not be able to get the part eventually.
So what is the big concern with I mean, I think it's a little obvious, but in your opinion, what's the big concern with foreign made parts and drones being sold in the US and why it's being banned?
Yeah. So there's the political answer to that question, and then there's the actual answer to that question. So the political answer to that question is a data security concern. That we're flying, 90% of people that are flying drones right now are flying DJI or Autel, and they're made by a Chinese company. And, China has a provision that basically all companies in China are subject to control from the military if need be. And so the concern is that, data about our country is going to an adversarial country. That's never been proven publicly. I'm told that there are classified reports that show some pretty concerning stuff, and I believe that. But I also think that that's not even really my biggest concern about it, because a lot of us are using software. There's one we use regularly, DroneSense, enables you to sandbox your data in drone census servers and doesn't go back to China. So there's ways to mitigate that concern. The bigger concern that I have is, China is an adversarial country right now, right? We're not at war. We're not even in a Cold War, but they are an adversary. And so if we got into a hot war, if I knew that I had 2 million of my sensors flying around my adversary's country, I damn sure would be using them to figure out what was going on. And also, I could potentially brick them and turn them off remotely. And that's not hypothetical. So John Deere actually did that in Russia. They shut down their tractors remotely when that conflict started. And DJI and Autel did that, I think it was Autel did it in Russia as well. Or maybe it was Ukraine. I don't remember which side of the fence. But all that to say, like, there are some real concerns that I think the data security thing is overhyped. I do think there's a risk there, but I think we're mitigating it effectively. So it's not that it's not a problem. The bigger issue is that, and this is the non-political answer, I think what actually is going on is America first, right? We want there to be a great American drone industry. And frankly, we didn't do it well. We shot ourselves in the foot. Early on, we were making the best drones, companies like AeroVironment and others. And we ceded that all to China. And I'll never forget, I was actually at the Consumer Electronics Show, which is happening right now in Vegas, met up with the DJI folks. I'll never forget, we went out back to that little area in between the convention centers, and the Chinese engineer from DJI like launched this drone and went up to like 1,000 feet. And I was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Little did I know, we were like half a mile from McCarran Airport, and like, yeah. Sure. It's mortifying to think what we did back then. But all that to say, I mean, look, I think we need to have an American drone industry, right? And there are companies that are doing really great stuff here. Skydio and Brink and Teal, and which is a Red Cat company, and many others. I think the challenge right now is that we've been spoiled by cheap foreign technology that works, frankly, really well and is really inexpensive. And we can't do it at scale with American companies right now for anywhere close to the amount of money that, it would take. So I think we're in this like really awkward teenage phase as an industry where like, we know we all need to move towards American stuff. Skydio drones, Brink drones, Teal drones, they're all very expensive. And up until, I think now they're doing a lot better, but there was a time when those aircraft just they couldn't do the things that the DJI drones could do. And so, I think what's really concerning to me about it is for the public safety agencies, right? So like they beg, borrow, and steal to get they're scraping change out of the couch to get, a fire department to buy one drone. And they could barely do that. And now we're telling them, hey, you can't use that one anymore. And you got to use this one that's 10 times more expensive. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it might be a great drone, but if I can't afford it, it's not an option for me. And so I'm concerned about that. So I appreciate the fact that we can continue to use the ones that we already have. You can actually continue to buy ones that are already FCC licensed, but there's already conversation about pulling back their existing FCC licenses so that you won't be able to buy, even if they're already licensed, you won't be able to buy new ones of them. You'll just be, nobody's saying they're coming for the ones you already have. So that's good.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a weird year or two in the drone industry while we try to figure out where this goes.
Well, so I guess buy your drones now, or
yeah.
I mean, that's part of it too. Well, yeah. And then actually let me add one other thing too, which is we've known for at least a year that this was coming for Chinese drones. The FCC went like way further than anybody expected and said, we're banning all foreign drones. And everybody in the industry is like, whoa, what the hell? Like, we can't do that, right? Because like, there's a lot of great drones that are made in Israel, some great drones that are made in Canada. We work really closely with Parrot. They're made in France, or they're a French company. There's some really great drone technology coming out of Ukraine, because they've had a lot of need. They're making 10,000 drones a month in Ukraine right now. They're going through 10,000 drones a month.
Crazy.
Which is insane. So they're all of a sudden, they're like, some of the worldwide expertise in drone manufacturing is in Ukraine, and we can't get that either. And so there's some interesting stuff happening. This caught everybody by surprise. I mean, even the companies, and I haven't, I've talked to them a little bit, but not at length about this, is even the companies that quote unquote won, right? The American companies, I think quietly are probably freaking out too, because a lot of their components come from outside the United States. Maybe not China, although in some cases China. But I think that it and this is not a political statement, and it is a political statement all at the same time, which is this administration's MO seems to be shock and awe and then dial it back. And I think that's where we're at right now. We haven't seen the dial it back yet. I actually was invited to a call with the White House this week to kind of hear what their plan is for dialing it back. Well, no, we're having a waiver process essentially. So, I think very much TBD at this point. Like I don't think anybody knows what to expect right now. And it's terrifying, but it's also invigorating, I think, because the industry really desperately needed to kind of take stock of itself and figure out the things that weren't working. And it's always painful when you have to let go of something that you use all the time. But I think it's going to end up with the drone industry in a much, much better place. It's just going to be a difficult road to get there. So I don't know if you can link to it or if you want to, but I wrote an article. I write an article every year for Drone Life online that talks about my predictions for this year in the drone industry. And it just came out this first week of the year. And I talked about this as the eyewall replacement cycle for the drone industry. So if you're a weather geek like I am, hurricanes every now and every 36 hours, they kind of tear themselves down and rebuild stronger. And it's real chaotic, and it's very difficult to predict what it's going to do in that process. That's where we are as an industry. Like we're in some ways we're tearing it down so we can rebuild it better, but it's going to be an interesting thing. And I think there'll be a lot of winners that come out of this. Probably some that we don't even know about yet, or that don't even exist yet.
Yeah. I think someone has to step up, because in my research of a replacement for the photo video quality of DJI, there's not a great American made option. For industry, for things like you do, there's really good options.
Yeah.
They're
the
more
one I would say,
but not as good.
for your industry, FreeFly is the one that I think I probably have the most confidence in. They've been around for years, and their drone was really built to carry like RED cameras and, like really big, large format film cameras. That's what they've always done. And they've always been, even while DJI is still a thing, if you wanted to fly a RED Epic, you would go use a FreeFly drone, period. And so they're actually, for this specific industry, there is a really good tool. But I think, it's going to be a hodgepodge for a while. In some ways we're back to duct taping GoPros to get it in the air. And it always was like with DJI, everything's integrated, right? So like the camera comes with the drone and the software's all integrated. I think we're going to be in this like weird area again where like, okay, I need one thing that's going to be the lifting body, and then I need to bolt something onto it that's going to do the mission that I want.
Someone is going to build a drone for camera specific shooters. Someone's going to build attach your Canon to this drone.
Well, that's FreeFly.
That, right?
Yeah, no, that's what FreeFly does, and they do it well.
Are the companies? If you look at the FPV drones, that's always been the standard: is build your own FPV and add whatever GoPro or action camera you want to it, because it's better quality.
Yeah, look, there's a cool company called Unusual Machines, and keep your eye on them too. Actually, the CEO was calling me as we were chatting here, so I'll call you back, Alan. But anyway, they're a really interesting company because they are a combination of the company launched as a umbrella company for Rotor Riot, which is FPV drones, and Fat Shark, which is the FPV goggles. And then, but they've raised a ton of money. They're building a motor factory here in the United States. Their whole goal is to build an American supply chain for drones. And they're just doing some really, really fascinating stuff. Alan, I've known Alan since the very beginning. Alan Evans is the CEO, just fascinating human being, incredibly smart guy. And he's got some big plans, and it's a company that I'm like following very closely, and I'm just really excited to see where that goes. So.
That's great. Well, this might all be good for American companies, right? In the long run, just maybe not in the short run.
100% certainty this will be good for the industry, but it's hard to stomach that right now.
Sure. Well, and it could all just change in a few months anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, that's par for the course with the Trump administration. Is like, we're doing it, we're not doing it, we're doing it, we're not doing it. Like, all right, just let me know where to
just give me somewhere to be. But I think it could be a good opportunity to eliminate the hobbyist level people that could be more dangerous with these drones, could be taking them out when they shouldn't and doing that.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get that cheap price, easy to fly, people aren't going to spend the thousands of dollars to just
Yeah,
go
but
have
like,
fun with it.
but this is America, man. Like, but you can't take my hobbies away from me. Like, let me,
Don't take.
so like, and I'm half kidding, but I'm also, like the model aircrafting was like, that was huge, right? I mean, I never really got into it, but there's a lot of people who do that stuff. And frankly, every one of those parts comes from China. So like, where does that leave those people? Like, we just need to be like, all right, this isn't a thing anymore. We don't do this.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's also interesting that we didn't get into it, but just like the idea of everyone regulates every municipality, every city,
yeah,
there's not a really big blanket one where
yeah,
I was just in New Zealand and they have country rules. It is,
yeah,
you can't fly it if you don't get permission to fly over that property. It's
yeah,
simple, easy, and like
yeah.
done.
Well, and the other thing that we haven't talked about here, and it's not really so pertinent to your audience, so I'll keep it short, is counter drones. And like, how do we make sure that people who shouldn't be there are not there? There's a couple of clients that we work with who have, very high profile protectees that they protect, from a security standpoint. And those guys have drones flying, all the paparazzi drones and that kind of stuff. I mean, you see it all the time at the studios in Atlanta, right? The Tyler Perry studios and Screen Gems and all that. They don't want drones flying over. So how do we protect that from happening? How do we make sure that with World Cup coming up, people aren't flying, scary drones into stadiums and stuff like that? So you're seeing that emerge right now as a big, big, big deal. And so, the Department of Homeland Security just gave out like $250 million worth of grant money to the World Cup cities to get counter drone technology. And, you see that right now, the FBI is the only agency that can really effectively mitigate drones here. Like DOD can do it as well. But the FBI actually opened a school where they're going to be training state and local agencies to do it. That school is here in Huntsville, which is pretty exciting. And so they're doing that now with the FIFA cities, the World Cup cities, and then eventually the others, the other cities and municipalities to follow. But that's going to be a big thing too to watch is, how do we keep how do we keep the bad guys from doing dumb stuff?
Yeah. Cause like we said, it shouldn't be as easy as it is to fly these things.
Well, I'll tell you, we did security for the Super Bowl in Atlanta back in 2019, and they had a temporary flight restriction over 30 miles over the city, and there were 57 drones that were caught incurring into that temporary flight restrictions.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
not
because like my
surprising,
house
right?
right now, I'm in that flight zone from the stadium. Like
Yeah.
it's a few miles that way.
Yep.
I can take it off from right here.
Yep.
I'm smart enough not to do these things when big events and stuff are going on, but it's like there's not a lot stopping it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which there should be. And that's what I
Yeah.
think is important. I think what you guys are doing is very important. And I'm excited to see how you guys keep pushing it and helping. Like you said, the first responders is such a major thing that to make their lives easier is so important. And
Yeah.
I just love what you've done since
Thanks.
we left CNN.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I lived in California during a lot of the wildfires, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that this type of technology will aid so much in exactly that, right? Like tracking and finding the wildfires as they happen. It's gonna be immense. It's gonna help a lot.
Look, package delivery is awesome. And don't get me wrong, like when I can do it here, I will sign up and Amazon will be dropping dog food on my front doorstep with a drone.
And lemons.
But that's not really, and lemons and eggs. That's not really the point though. Like the real value here is how do we stop wildfires before they spread? How do we get defibrillators to people before they die? How do we, help a kid who's having an asthma attack on the playground get an EpiPen? Like that's the real, how do we move blood? How do we move organs? I'll never forget because, you guys know Atlanta. I was standing in the parking lot at a blood bank and they were like, you can see right over there, Scottish Rite Hospital. It's like 3 miles from here. And, we supply the critical blood for the kids that are in there and need it. And it sometimes can take 3 hours to get a sample from the hospital to us and then get the blood back to that kid. You could literally fly a drone there in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a really tangible way that you can save lives. I mean, we did back before COVID, we did a trial with the CDC where we actually flew a simulated blood sample from St. Croix to St. Thomas. It was 43 miles over the ocean, and they're like, during hurricanes and other reasons, they they had trouble doing that on a regular basis, and we were like, they were like, can we do it with a drone? And we did it with it. Like
That's
that's
awesome.
really cool stuff. What Zipline's doing in Africa, delivering blood and vaccines, and all, like that's where the real value of this industry is. So
Yeah, it can really change people's lives in a substantial way as opposed to getting your eggs delivered. But
Yeah.
which will be cool
But you
too.
still need eggs. So
I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
When my friend comes in town, his mom lives in Conyers. I was looking it up. They deliver in Conyers. We're going to go to his house in a couple weeks, and we're going to do a test run, and I'll send you a video.
I'm totally. A buddy of mine lives in Bentonville. Our marketing guy lives in Bentonville, and he's like, I just like, it's the coolest thing ever. So
Yeah,
like, I'm in. Sign me up.
well,
Good.
thanks, Matt. Thanks for coming on and talking to us. Maybe when some of these things kind of shake out later this year, we'll have you back on to see where we landed with all these
Would
things.
love to.
And we'll make sure
Thanks
to
for
share
having
that post that you're talking about. I was reading through it the other day already, so I will we'll share it to everyone.
Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
thank you guys.